Hello everyone and welcome to episode 7 of Oche 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 with me, Dylan Williams from Darts Cymru. Given this is the first episode of 2022, I just wanted to welcome you all again and wish you all a happy new year, and thank you for all of your continued support. But back to the present, I'm joined today by Darts referee and LGBT plus the PDC's ambassador, Huw Ware. How are you, Huw? Are you okay?
Hi Dylan, yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Yes, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to all the viewers as well.
Brilliant. No, thanks for giving up your time, Huw. It means a lot. So thank you very much. If we get started, then I start with most of my guests. You know, about where has the love of the darts? Where did it all start? And I think before we get on to the officiating stuff, I'd just like to know, what was your first sort of experience, and if you had a lasting sort of first memory of darts?
Yeah, so basically I got into darts when I was like 11, and it was just like purely by chance. I actually like remember this, like, so I was 11 years old and my mum, like, she was cooking lunch, so she asked me to go and set the table in the front room. So I went to do that, and like literally the darts was just on the television as I walked into the front room. God knows how it was on, thinking about it. I certainly didn't switch it on, but it was just on. It might have been just a sign from God above saying, this is your future, to a lost and lonely 11-year-old. So I literally just sat down and started watching it. Ignored the table. I ignored setting the table. Mum came in with lunch and was like, where's the table? Sorry, I'm watching the darts. So literally, like, so that was the afternoon session. I remember what tournament it was. It was the afternoon session of the World Match Play. So this was, so it must have been like during my summer holidays from school. So I sat down and watched it in the afternoon, and I've kind of been aware of it anyway. Like I think I remember my mum sort of watching it from a couple of years before that, but I wasn't really interested. But I recognised it anyway, so I sat down and watched it. And then in the evening, I wanted to watch it again. And that night, it was Phil Taylor versus Dennis Priestley, 2005 World Match Play second round. It was a classic game, and I think I've actually seen it repeated on Sky Sports over the last couple of years. And when I look back on it now, I mean, that game was like, it was so lucky. It was like one great big advert for me for everything that makes darts great. To a complete newcomer to it at the time, knowing nothing about the sport, I learned about it just from that one game, the skill in accuracy under pressure, missing under pressure, missing when you don't expect it, hitting when you didn't expect it, and just sort of like how brilliant it was and how the crowd were all involved. The way Phil Taylor was leading, then Dennis Priestley was leading, it went to 2 clear legs, then Phil Taylor wins. It went, the lead changed hands about 2 or 3 times in the last few, and then I was hooked. And then I watched the following night, and John Part beat Phil Taylor, who had such a good game the day before. Is my internet okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can see you froze for a bit, but you're okay now, Huw.
I'm here, I'm with us. Even the computer was like, oh, shut up. No. So yeah, no, so that was the moment really. From then on, I was hooked. Yeah, so that was back in 2005 when I was 11.
So having seen it on TV, what was that? What had that given you, or had it created a path where you thought, okay, I want to get into darts, I want to play darts, or was it just sort of a viewing sport that you were going to take more interest in?
Well, I mean, after that, I think I must have got a dartboard and some darts in like the October of that year. And I started playing, and I just found that equally as addicting as watching it. I mean, I suppose that there probably was a period where I thought, oh, I'd like to do this professionally, but I was never like good enough to do that. Sort of the refereeing, I mean, I enjoyed refereeing. I had a few opportunities to do it because nobody else wanted to do it, and I knew I could, so I ended up sort of getting a bit of a reputation for doing that. Probably coupled with the fact that I lost a lot of the time as well, so that meant you had to mark the next game anyway. So yeah, so I mean, sort of openings came up that way, but I never thought when I was a kid, or when I grow up, I want to be a professional darts referee.
Yeah.
Like, that just wasn't. I mean, the chances of that were very slim. like I'm just really, really lucky sat here today to say that I'm in professional darts. I'm just very lucky. It was never something that was on my radar when I was a kid.
Yeah. So before we get on to the officiating and the refereeing, then where did your sort of playing career take you? Were you involved in youth darts or what, you know?
Yeah, I played for.
Yes.
Sorry.
Any success then involved?
I put well. I suppose like sort of the peak for me was playing for Wales youth in the WTF Europe Cup youth,
Okay.
and that was only a few months before I became a referee because I went to do the Winmore World Masters only a few months after that, and that kind of factored a lot into my decision to be a referee because when that opportunity came up to do the World Masters, and sort of essentially sort of sacrificing my playing career to go and do that, I thought to myself, well, because because being at the Europe Cup in the room that day, there was Jeffery Zwaan, Josh Payne, Max Hopp was there as a 13-year-old playing for Germany. So he tells me, you know, that he was there that weekend as well. There are a lot of players in the room who are now on the pro tour themselves, who've gone on to do like really good things. So you could tell those who had it and those who made into the latter category, really. So when it came to being a referee, I was like, well, playing for Wales youth, that's probably the best that I'm going to get to.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to go to the World Masters and referee it, and then on to Lakeside after that, and go to places as a referee that I'd never get to as a player. So it actually kind of, it did kind of affect my decision to become a ref in the end. But yeah, Wales youth for sure.
Brilliant. So you were in really good company. So you must have been a half decent player then, Huw. It sounds like you're dragging yourself down too much there. I'd say anybody who's reached that sort of level must have been, a good player. Were you playing for a club or a pub or just practicing at home sort of at that age?
It did get to the point where I was playing 3 or 4 times a week. I played in a Monday league, the Cardiff and Whitchurch League. I played in a Wednesday league, which was run by a guy called Tony Petrie, who was a fabulously run singles league that played out of Riley's Cardiff when I played in.
Oh yeah.
And that had a really good standard. I played in the local Barry League. I grew up in Barry, so I played in the local Barry League on a Friday. And that was where I started. That was the first place that I started playing darts, was out of the Barry Rugby Club.
Okay.
And then Glamorgan Youth was one Sunday a month. And there could have been a tournament on the Saturday and or Sunday with Welsh ranking points. So I used to go to a few of those, where obviously a lot of top Welsh players were. So yeah, no, I was around very good players a lot of the time. And when we went to Aberdeen to play the Europe Cup Youth, I mean, we got to the semi-finals, which was really good. And we lost to the eventual champions, which were the Netherlands.
Okay.
And they had a really good team. And I think I did my bit through the 2 days. I won a few games, lost a few as well. I remember playing Jimi Hendrix, who was fantastic that weekend. And the way it was in the semi-finals, you each played each other, and you played one leg against each other. So I went up on stage to play my leg against Jimi Hendrix, and he went out in 13 darts. So that was it. Done. I was like, goodbye. I was like, oh, okay, you've got it then. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, no, I did my bit, but Wales could have benefited from a stronger number 4. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so you've obviously played at a decent level, which would make me think that you've got a decent sort of action. So if you had to compare the Huw Ware action of that day to a pro player on the tour today, would there be somebody who you think, oh, my throw resembles that person?
No. No, not at all. No, any budding dart players out there, don't look at videos of me throwing, if there are any out there, because God, you wouldn't get very far. No, I had a really weird, I had a really weird sort of grip on the dart, because they always say, like, hold the dart like you hold a pencil. And I don't know whether I probably used to hold a pencil quite weirdly. I'm not sure. I used to have quite nice handwriting when I was in school, so I thought it was okay. But like the way I used to grip the dart was, it hindered me rather than helped me. So
Okay.
there was a lot of finger to get out of the way, you know, as I was releasing the dart. And there was no consistency to my throw at all.
Okay.
If I was throwing them right, and if you know, I could have a really good 5-10 minutes, but then have a really bad 15 minutes, and then I'd have a good 5-10 minutes again. You know, so there was no, you know, I could throw good darts, but I just wasn't consistent enough. And I used to sort of, you know, the second of someone said game on, I would just kind of buckle under the pressure a bit. And again, I suppose that's because I didn't have a very good throw, I didn't have a very good grip, or is that, you know, I wasn't technically very good. When I was under the pressure, that probably didn't help either.
So if we move on from Huw the player to Huw the referee, you know, how did the officiating side of things start? You've mentioned it a little bit in parts already, but take me back to that first refereeing experience, if you don't mind, Huw.
Probably the first proper time I did it was when we had so I was playing for Glamorgan Youth, and we had a friendly match against Glamorgan Seniors, and this would have been in 2008, 2009, I think. And I was there playing for Glamorgan Youth, but our regular caller for both the youth and the seniors didn't turn up for whatever reason. So they were sort of scratching around for a caller, and they knew that I could do it. So they asked me if I go on stage and do it. So I did. Stayed on there for like quite a few matches. And when I came off, the senior squad came to me and said, "That sounded really good. We've actually got a window available for another caller with our regular caller. If you would like to come along to Glamorgan senior matches to referee." So Glamorgan were in the Premier Division of the county championship. So you know, you had all the Yorkshires and the Lancashires of this world coming down to Glamorgan every year. So that just gave me like a really fantastic stage experience. And I always say to sort of budding callers today is that if you go to county, you can learn so much on that stage. You can develop your voice, you can develop your style, you can make your mistakes, you can learn your lessons. You know, every match is different. There could be needle in the game. You might have to ask the crowd for order, or you know, there'll be dramatic games and bad games and good games. All sorts of a variety of things. It's an excellent learning ground, the county championship.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how that started. And then it must have been about 2 or 3 years later I got the call to go and do the Wimbledon World Masters. So I went from sort of there at county level to there very quickly. There was no in between at all.
God. So going back to that day where you called for Glamorgan, it might be an impossible question to answer, but if that hadn't have happened, that caller hadn't have turned up on that day, do you think you'd be where you are today?
Possibly not. Possibly not. I'm not sure. I mean, I think. Oh, I don't know whether an opportunity would have come up in the future. If not that day, I'm not sure. But yeah, and I mean, as I say, like even then, like even sort of going to county, like I wasn't thinking to myself, "Oh, I'm going to make a living out of this." Like, you know, it's just not possible to think that way. The chances are so minimal. So yeah, no, it just was what it was. I took the county to be just like sort of like a nice weekend, and they always said that as a thank you, you get 1 free weekend at an away venue of your choice when Glamorgan are playing away. So that was great. So I got to go to Yorkshire County. I went to Essex, and I went somewhere else. I think I can't quite remember now. It was really funny story about Yorkshire. When I went to Yorkshire way, was just after I did my first Lakeside. And when I walked into the venue on the Saturday morning, and we've been up since about 3 or 4 in the morning to drive from Glamorgan to Yorkshire, and walked in there, and one of the BDO officials who I know, called Sylvia Smart, said, "We've only got one caller today. Would you mind going to give him a hand?" So I went and met the caller, and it was Kirk Bevins.
God.
So that was a small world. So that was way back in like January 2012, I think. So.
So you were obviously quite useful with numbers then. Did you like maths in school, or was it just the patterns involved in darts that kind of, you know, brought that interest really?
Yeah, it was the patterns, I think. I mean, I wasn't very good at maths at all. And even my mental arithmetic wasn't as good as what it is now free darts, you know. I just sort of remember just sort of throwing and practicing when I first got a dartboard. And over the first couple of months of practicing, the numbers just kind of set, and all the patterns just kind of set in my mind. And it helped my mental arithmetic in school like no end. And I've been on radio before now, just sort of advocating for dartboards in schools, because it helped me so much, and I think it would help the kids so much with their mental arithmetic through a very fun medium of throwing, you know, your magnetic darts on your paper dartboards. It's a fun way of learning, and the kids are learning at the same time. So I just remembered like sort of all the patterns developing, and then I went a bit further and started imagining like all these kind of unorthodox ways of taking things. So once the pattern's set, there we are. I was away. So I can count the dartboards well, I think, but I can't do 364 times 52 or something like this. And I even like sometimes even adding up from 501 upwards would be a struggle for me, but I can do 501 down. It's just all to do with the darts.
I completely agree with you, Huw. I was similar. Maths wasn't a subject I enjoyed, but once I got into darts, you know, putting the trebles, putting the doubles together, it's just something, like you say, something clicks, doesn't it? And it seems like a very natural sort of way of just working everyday maths out then. And and funnily enough, I've got a 5-year-old son. He has a dartboard, and I tell you what, Huw, his maths has just gone from there to there in a matter of months. You know, they're just patterns and things stick in your mind, and boom, it just clicks, doesn't it?
Yeah. I do honestly think that it should be sort of taught in schools, and I don't know why it's not sort of part of national curriculums or something like this. I don't know whether it's health and safety or whether it's like some sort of other reasons. But I honestly think like if we had dartboards in schools, that kids' mental arithmetic would just improve so much, really, because it's such a useful way of improving it. Because like as I say, like mine wasn't very good at all before the darts came along, and you know, if your son's already only 5 and his maths is already improving a lot as well, so
unbelievable.
He'll be doing well in maths class.
You mentioned Lakeside in parts already. I just wanted to take you back to that. Was it the 2012 Video World Championship where you became the youngest broadcast referee to referee a match on TV? Just tell me about that Lakeside experience, because you'd obviously probably watched Lakeside in years before you attended there. So what was it like having that sort of crowd behind you and the TV cameras focused on you?
I remember I'd been to Lakeside before, but that was for a youth event in like the July, so very, very different. My first day refereeing at Lakeside was the first time I'd been to Lakeside World Championships ever. So it was completely new for me. And I remember second refereeing the very first match of the tournament. And I think I did the third match on stage. That was my first on stage. And the noise for the walk-ons of the very first match, I never realized how loud Lakeside was. I always thought when watching on television, it came across as quite quiet and almost quite subdued at times. It isn't. It's absolutely really loud, because there's a very low ceiling, packed out audience of about 1,200 people for that first day. And the noise, and compared with the low ceiling, they do blow the roof off. It really was loud. And I remember being a bit taken aback by that. I was like, oh, wow, okay. Bit nervous now. And my first match was a total blur. It was a total blur. I remember that there was a confusion with the scores, unfortunately, at the end of the second set, which was quite a crucial moment of the game. My fault. I'll throw my hands up and take the responsibility for that. And I remember being really gutted about that afterwards. Of course, it was my first match on BBC television. I'm only just turned 18 at the time. And unfortunately there was a mistake, so that was quite tough for me, to be honest. But then what can you do? The only thing you can do is keep going. And I refereed the rest of the week, and the rest of the week was absolutely fine. I refereed a great semi-final between Wesley Helms and Tony O'Shea, I remember. And you just sort of go on from there. And it's about, if you make a mistake on stage, then you have to, you can kick the cat afterwards if you want to, but or please don't do that, because you'll get the RSPCA on top of you then as well. So you don't want that on top of a mistake. But all you can do is sort of put it to the back of your mind and just sort of keep going.
Yeah.
Because if you allow the mistake to affect your mental concentration for the rest of the game, you're going to make another mistake.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you just have to put it. It's gone now. Move on, because there's another 3 darts coming.
Yeah. So would you say, obviously you were very nervous on that day. Do you still get that same feeling, in a Premier League match, in an Ali Pali match today?
Yeah, you do get you do get a certain buzz, if you like, in the pit of your stomach. I'm very sort of like experienced at that now.
Okay.
But that feeling doesn't go away. No.
And I suppose you probably would want that, would you, Huw? As the players are nervous, the markers are probably nervous. You probably need that little bit of adrenaline or buzz just to get you up for the job, really.
Yeah, and to just sort of make sure that you're concentrating at all times. And yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't want to sort of get to the stage where I'm like, oh God,
Yeah.
like this is boring me, or I'm not interested, or something like this.
Yeah.
If I did, then it probably best to So I just don't want to get to that stage at all.
So after that,
yeah, no,
sorry, after that first Lakeside, then did you start to think, okay, this could be my career, this could be my job for the next 20, 30 years?
No, to be honest. I mean, I was still. So what was I at 18? I was just coming to the end of my A levels at the time when I did my first Lakeside, and then I was in university studying English language.
Okay.
And the idea was I wanted to become a sports journalist. Was what I had in mind at that time. I wanted to become a sports journalist. So as time went on, and I left university and went to work for BBC Sport Wales for a time.
Oh yeah.
Like Sian, so Sian Price. Now she works in exactly the same department as I used to work in.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was my plan for a while. So for a while, like I sort of had 2 livings really, because by the time I joined BBC Sport Wales, I'd also joined the PDC. So I had both going on, really, with more emphasis on BBC Sport Wales at that time. But now in 2022, my emphasis is going to be on darts more now, as my work is increasing.
And obviously, like you say, your sort of training ground was the BDO. When that time came for you to make that switch from the BDO to the PDC, was it a dilemma, or as we've seen now, the way the BDO was run to the ground in the end, was it an easy decision for you to take, you?
No, it wasn't. No, because the team of BDO refs that we were a very strong team, and they were absolutely my friends, my colleagues, my teammates, and it's been really hard, sort of watching them.
Yeah.
With everything that's happened with the BDO over the last couple of years, has been tough. But what's great is that they're coming back in April with the WDF. So that's going to be fantastic. I'm hoping to go, and I'm going to go and support them and all that. So
yeah,
so that's going to be really good. But we all still keep in touch. We had a Zoom call quite a few months ago now, but we had a team ref sort of catch up thing with all 5 of us there: Nick, Marco, Anthony, Charlie, and Richard, and myself. And I actually saw Marco Mayer. I went to spot the World Series of Darts finals in Amsterdam.
Oh yeah.
At the back end of last year, and I saw Marco for the first time in ages and ages, so sort of in person. He came along, so it was great to see him.
Brilliant.
Had a couple of chats with Nick Rolls recently. So yeah, no, so we all still keep in touch, but it was very hard at that time.
Hmm. And it's quite symbolic that it's going back to the Lakeside, I think, isn't it? You know, it went to the Indigo for a year. You know, with all the wranglings in the background, obviously, you know, it wasn't great. But you know, as a TV production, I thought it looked quite good in the Indigo. But I think the WDF going back to the home of world darts, I think is something really, you know, it really chimes a chord with me. I think, yeah, it's going back to where it should be, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lakeside chimes the chords exactly as you say, doesn't it? And so, sometimes it's like a Wembley Stadium, isn't it? It's you know, or Winter Gardens even, or so, you know, like an iconic venue.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's that's worth more than if you went to a newer place which may be bigger, more high tech, and all that. So I remember we went to do an exhibition. We had an annual exhibition in every January, and I think the first one was in 2014, I think, and that was held in that room in the Indigo too. And we came away from that first night just sort of saying amongst ourselves, just like, if the Lakeside ever moved away from Lakeside, this would actually be an ideal venue. So it was always kind of like in the background as a potential if, you know, if it was to go. But and again, and as you say, I think it did a really good job.
Did, yeah.
And it looked great on television. But the Lakeside is the Lakeside, of course.
Yeah.
And you've got a crowd right there, because that crowd used to go every year. You know, you saw a lot of similar faces and new faces, but you saw a lot of similar faces that would, you know, they would go every year, and that was their thing in the first week of the new year. So there's a loyal crowd there that will still be there come April. And yeah, no, I think it's great. I can't wait to go. It's going to be fab.
Exactly. You know, you mentioned some of your refereeing colleagues there now. You know, when you were breaking onto the scene, you know, did you have any sort of role models? You know, obviously people like Bruce Spendley, Martin Fitzmaurice, Russ. You know, did you look up to these guys thinking, you know, I'd like to reach those sort of levels one day?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I did used to watch all of those guys. I think Bruce Spendley, he was a particularly big inspiration for me. He had such an amazing voice, didn't he? You know, his 180 calls and the way his voice would reflect the drama of what's just happened on the dartboards. You know, he used to do that so well. I thought he had an amazing voice, and a heck of a career as well. You know, going back from the late 70s and early 80s. Right through to 2013 when he retired after the Taylor Van Gerwen final. Just an extraordinary career. Saw everything pretty much when it comes to TV darts, TV World Championships. I got to meet him a couple of times, only in small moments, but he came across just in those small moments just what a lovely, gentle human being he was. Even in those two very small moments where I was able to just say a quick hello and we were able to shake hands. Very sad news last year of his passing, obviously. It was very sad to hear. But yeah, he was a big inspiration for me, for sure.
And, you know, obviously Bruce himself, and then Martin, Russ, Georgie Noble, they all have sort of unique ways of calling, don't they? Did you feel a certain pressure to call in a certain way, or to have a unique way of calling 180, 140, whatever? You know, did you feel that sort of pressure coming into the games?
Yeah, I think I was quite sort of what's funny is that if you watch my very first Lakeside and watch me at the last World Championships, for example, it's very different. There's a big difference there. And my style has definitely evolved over the years, I think. I think my 180 has always kept pretty consistent, but a lot of other calls I have changed. And yeah, no, style is something that is very much at the forefront of my mind.
Okay.
And I think it's similar with a lot of other referees as well. I mean, Bruce Spendley, actually, if you go and watch his very first TV tournament, TV World Championships, his 180 was actually quite fast. But then you watch him at the end of his career, and his 180 was one of the longest.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how conscious or subconscious the involvement in a referee style is. I mean, I think some of mine has kind of been a bit of both. I think there have been a couple of times where I have thought I think I could do with improving that, but then I think there are others where I thought, oh, I'm not sure how my tone of voice just seems to have changed here, or something has happened which I didn't sort of realize myself. So it's not uncommon for referees to evolve their style. I mean, I don't feel pressure in terms of my style these days. I'm pretty much settled with it, but I'm always looking to improve. And I don't mind admitting that there are times where I do go back and watch, not full matches necessarily, but maybe certain parts of a match, just as listen to how I'm coming across, and just to think, oh, I could have done better there, or this could sound a bit better. I do go back and watch myself sometimes, just to sort of evaluate how I'm sounding, how I'm doing.
Do you have a favourite number to call, Huw?
Oh no, I think it's got to be 180.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be 180. Actually, no, cancel that. The double for a 9 darter. That's the one. That's the one I love to call. The double for the 9 darter. Yeah, for sure. You know what's really funny about the very first 9 darter I called was Alan Norris on stage 2 of Minehead, and but the funny thing was I hadn't been more than 6 perfect darts into a 9 darter before that ever. I'd gone 180, 180, or 180, 177, whatever, but I never had the 7th dart land, let alone the 8th or 9th. So that was really good. I remember that.
That was a question I was going to ask later, actually. When you when that 9 darter goes in, or say a 170 checkout, you've got, in the Premier League, you could have 12,000 fans going absolutely ballistic in that room, but then you and your 2 markers are completely deadpan, sort of no emotion. How do you keep that sort of calmness in a room which is going absolutely ballistic?
I just think because you have to, because you're professional, and that's part of the job. I mean, you may be bursting inside. I remember the first, my first 9 darter with Alan Norris, place is going ballistic, and I do just sort of remember thinking to myself, right, sell it, do your job, blah blah blah. You had the rest of the game to go. I think he hit the 9 darter sort of quite early on in the game. So we had the whole rest of the game to go, and I think I had another game to do straight after. So once they were both done, that was when I thought to myself, I got back to the apartment and like, oh my God, I've had a 9 darter. That was the moment. But no, you just kind of you do in that moment, you do your job.
Yeah.
And that's it. So yeah, no, it's just about just staying calm and just staying professional in those moments.
Oh, brilliant. And I just want to move on to the practical side of refereeing, if that's okay. So sort of preparation for matches, we often hear about players arriving at the venue 2-3 hours before, obviously going to the practice room. But what were those last couple of hours? Say if you were calling a game at 7 o'clock, when does your routine sort of kick in here? When do you have a regular sort of routine you follow?
It's quite relaxed, to be honest, Dylan. It's what tends to happen is we might get there maybe 2.5 hours even before the tournament starts on the very first day, just so we've got our bearings, or we might have a meeting, a pre-tournament meeting, and just to sort of get our bearings on the very first day. But once the second day onwards starts, sometimes we could go about an hour before, an hour and a half, because there's just sort of not much to do really for us, if there isn't anything. So if I'm calling the first game at if the first walk on is at about 7:10, I might get there for 6 o'clock.
Okay.
5:45. So yeah, no, it's very relaxed, to be honest. And the only sort of preparation might be preparation that you've done yourself, in that, if you've got a quick game that night, you think to yourself, oh, I've got a quick game tonight, I've got to be on it. Or either that, or like if you've got 2 players who like to sort of spray them about the board a bit, you might have 1 or 2 things in your mind about which ways they'd like to go. because I know Dirk van Dijvenbode, he likes on 69, he'll go treble 11 for double 18.
Okay.
So that's something that I always have in mind when I referee for Dirk van Dijvenbode. Watch him next time, he'll go for treble 15 or something next time. Now I said that. No, but yeah, no. So and I know that because he's nearly caught me out with that before. So I thought to myself after that, right, it's okay. You like treble 11, so I know that in advance. For example, but that's pretty much it really in terms of the preparation.
So in terms of rotas and timetables, so Sky would announce at the end of their show, tomorrow's night's matches are get a win an MVG first, blah 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 second. When would you as referees then find out, okay, when am I on, and who makes that decision?
Well, we tend to have a rota given to us before the tournament starts.
I see. Okay.
So you may not necessarily know. You'll know you're doing
game
the
2
second match.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing game 2 on day 5, but obviously you don't know what game 2 is going to be. It just kind of falls like that. And sometimes it's left up to us. Sometimes, if it's a small 3-day event on television, they might just leave it up to us, and the referees who are there will get into a huddle and say, right, who wants to go first? Who anyone want to do the final? Who doesn't want to do the final? And it just kind of, we'll work it out between ourselves, and we'll stick to that pattern every day. So it's a mixture of both. But it's not a case of, right, it's Gezi versus MVG, so therefore you do that. It's not like that.
And what are they like as a gang to work with? All the markers, referees, you all get on well? You all mix outside of work, sort of thing?
Yes, we do. Well, it was really interesting being at the World Championships the last time because of COVID regulations. We were put into sort of 2 teams.
Okay.
So that was really interesting, and sort of working particularly closely with a certain group of people. So it was me and Wes, and yeah, we had a really nice time together. The time I was there, just up until Christmas. So that was really nice. But yeah, we do all get on. We get on. It's a nice group to work with. I mean, really good group to work with as well. I mean, in terms of like sort of the 2 markers that I'll have on stage with me, it doesn't sort of matter who it is. Like, I trust them implicitly with the scores and all that. I mean, I am checking as well, of course, but at the same time, like, I trust them all absolutely implicitly. They're so good at what they do. And obviously the 3 other referees as well, they go without saying, don't they? Russ, George, Kirk, all amazing referees, amazing careers. Great to be around, nice to work with. Yeah, no complaints. I don't know what they say about me. I don't know what they say about me, but that's
another matter. Yeah.
Exactly.
In terms of venues, do you have one specific venue that you really enjoy calling at, or one sort of tournament or a format? Which one would you feel you really enjoy?
I'm looking forward to refereeing Cardiff Premier League in literally a couple of Thursdays' time.
Exactly, yeah.
That's going to be really good. So for obvious reasons, I like Motorpoint. Yeah, because I went there as a fan as well for years. I remember going to the very first one in the Motorpoint back in 2007. And I think also the World Match Play, because I also used to go to that as a kid for a while. So if I had to narrow it down to 2, I would probably say those, just because I used to go to them regularly as a kid. Probably, yeah.
And then that brings us nicely on to sort of the best match you've ever refereed. Would you have one that you could put your finger on, maybe in terms of, sort of something big,
standard or something big?
Yeah.
It's so difficult to make it as one. And I was having this conversation with Russ actually at the World Championships. It's so difficult to narrow it down to one, because sort of what constitutes a great match? Is it a great world final? Is it just a fantastic standard? Is it a match which may not have the best standard, but it's got a heck of a lot of drama in it? How do you quantify what makes a great match? I remember one. I remember one match. I always mention this one, and it was so. I mean, this is a good example, really. James Wade versus Darren Webster. European Tour in Hildesheim, third round, back in 2019, I think.
Okay.
But the reason why I remember that one so much was because I think Darren won the match 6-5 with 110 average. James had 109 average and hit a 9-darter in the game. And I think those were the averages. I mean, I might be wrong, but whichever it was, they were both tremendous averages. There was a 9-darter from James, and Darren won the match 6-5. It was an incredible game.
Yeah.
So for some reason, that one sticks in my head. But then, of course, I mean, I've also refereed 2 World Finals. So where do I put those alongside? I suppose sort of personally, those are the 2 biggest matches that I've ever called in my life. But then there's another match which had a great standard. So it's really difficult to say. It's so difficult. I could pick different ones out for different reasons. But yeah, the one I remember thinking, walking downstairs, like, wow, that was a great game, James and Darren.
Yeah. You mentioned the Euro Tour there. There's something so special about a Euro Tour weekend, isn't there? And do you feel that same sort of feeling as an official involved?
I do. I mean, they're very intense. Personally, I find them quite intense to work at because you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 referees, so you're doing 2 on, 2 off, twice a session, 2 sessions a day for 3 days.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite a lot, really. And you'll have a 2-hour break in between where you'll quickly grab something to eat, and then you might be sort of waiting around a bit, and then you start again. So yeah, no, it's quite intense, and I don't tend to stay up at all in the bar afterwards during those 3 days, simply because you're up again so early the next day.
Yeah.
So I don't tend to sort of relax at those events unless it's after the last day and the flight home is maybe a bit later, because sometimes you might be flying home, the shuttle will be coming through at like 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Even after the tournament's finished, you may not get a lot of downtime. So yeah, but they're great. They're absolutely great. They're a lot of work, but they're fabulous. Really, really nice. And we're very lucky we get to go to some nice places.
Yeah.
Went to Budapest last year. That was very interesting. And I did have a bit of time to sort of look around there, so that was very nice. And they're just fantastic for the European crowds, and they're also great for a lot of the players to get a lot of stage experience. Stage experience that could prove vital if they're making their debuts at the World Match Plays and the World Grand Prix, further down the line.
I'd never really thought of it, like a mentally draining experience. Now that you say it, you're refereeing so many games, maybe consecutive games as well. When you arrive back in Wales on that Monday, say after a Euro Tour, what's the first thing you do in terms of downtime, or what would you look forward to doing then on that flight home?
I'd probably just get home and just have a bit of downtime.
Yeah.
Because it sort of depends what time you get home as well, I suppose. Sometimes you could be back in Wales by about lunchtime. Possibly. So you would have the rest of the day to yourself. But yeah, no, I tend to not do anything on a Monday after European Tour, and then I'll be back to whatever it is I'm doing on the Tuesday. So yeah, no, it is quite intense, but it's fine. It's just fine. And again, PDC, you have really nice people to work with. Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Brilliant. I wanted to move on to talk a bit about the Rainbow Laces campaign. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, you are the PDC's LGBT plus ambassador. Can you just tell me a bit about how the campaign sort of got up and running, and what is your involvement in sort of raising awareness of the campaign?
So it was a few years ago. We decided. I had a chat with Matt Porson, the chief executive of the PDC, and we decided to ally with the Rainbow Laces campaign. And the Rainbow Laces campaign is basically it's a campaign that I hate using this phrase, but raising awareness makes it sound like it's a charity. But it's the only phrase I could think of in this moment. It's raising awareness for LGBT plus in sport. The idea being that should you choose to come out, and that's very important to emphasize. Obviously, it's completely people's choice whether they want to come out in sport or not. but it's just to say that if you choose, then the environment that you're in will support you. It's about getting the environment as ready as possible for somebody to come out, and to make sure that, you know, have they got everything sort of in place in terms of their culture, in terms of all the various aspects to make sure that if somebody does come out, you know, they're going to be accepted. They're not going to face any sort of prejudice or homophobia or things like this. So that's what the campaign is basically about. And it's been going on. It's been going on for quite a few years now in football, and it's diversified into rugby and cricket, and Sky Sports push it heavily. Loads of different sports involved. So we just decided that it would be a good idea for darts to get involved as well. So we do that. We're very fortunate because we have the Players' Championship finals in Minehead, which coincides with the 2-week Rainbow Laces period. So we offer Rainbow Laces to all the players and officials, as well as badges. We changed the PDC logo, which is below the dartboard on the main stage, to rainbow colours. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. But I mean, the PDC do a lot more work on that than what I do, honestly.
Okay.
You know, Dave Allen and Matt Porter, you know, they do so much more work than me to make sure that that's all coordinated and that's all sort of done, liaising with Stonewall. I'm a Stonewall sport champion. And I have this LGBT ambassador role with the PDC as well. But I mean, it's hats off to the PDC as far as I'm concerned. They've just done the most amazing job with making sure that you know, the Minehead is all ready to go with the Rainbow Laces. And I think we've got a good balance there, you know, for one tournament a year, just to have that sort of message. That's in the background really a lot of the time. I think it's really good. And, you know, the support of the PDC personally means a lot, but it's not really sort of about me at all, because I've been out for years now. It's about trying to make the sport, you know, better and better and better all the time, so that when the next person comes out, they will be absolutely fine, and they know that they're going to be fine, that they can come out should they choose.
Yeah. And, you know, 4 years down the line here, would you say, is there anything the PDC could improve, or they could teach any of the sports? Because I think it's still very much a taboo subject in a number of sports, isn't it? Whereas darts has really sort of embraced it. So, you know, do you feel the PDC could be seen as sort of sector leaders then in sport, in terms of helping other sports?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, I think visibility is always the key. I mean, I didn't come out just to be visible, if I'm honest. I came out for my own personal reasons. But an offset of doing that is that you do become visible. So visibility is the key. So I think the more people that do come out, the better things will be in sport. Sort of full stop. And again, that's not to be confused with people should come out.
No.
Obviously, again, it's completely people's choice. But just to say that I think the more people that do, visibility is enhanced, and things will just naturally get better from there. So I think Josh Cavallo in football has just come out, and I think his visibility now will hopefully, you know, encourage more people, because you know, they will think to themselves, well, if he can do it and he's okay, then so can I. Exactly. And again, so I know I'm repeating myself. I know it's everybody's free choice, and it's completely up to them whether they come out or not. But I would always encourage a person to come out, because I don't know anybody ultimately who has come out who has regretted it. Exactly. Not ultimately, you know, not when all is said and done. It certainly helped. It certainly helped me. I feel so much more comfortable going to darts now than what I did before I came out. I mean, this was years ago now, still back when I was in the BDO. And when I came out, I had no problems whatsoever at that time. And I mean, it just is what it is, to be honest. I'm very happy, and I hope, you know, in the future, because I'm not the first openly gay person in darts, and I certainly won't be the last. Exactly. As long as things are okay for the next person, that's what it's about. Yeah.
No. I personally just like to say that you and the PDC are doing, you know, great work. Obviously, it's sort of It's more visual, obviously, in terms of the other players' championship, but an inclusive darting environment is a better environment, and long may that continue, really.
I mean, I can't thank Matt Porter enough for all of his support, and for Dave Allen and everyone at the PDC. The support that they've given me has been really invaluable, because there was a certain time a few years ago where I felt like I needed it at that time.
Oh, brilliant.
And so that the way that they didn't just sort of say yes to me, they sort of they said it and then did it
And
as
did it,
well.
yeah.
That they did as well as said. So
Really backed it up, yeah.
I can't put into words my thanks to Matt.
Oh, brilliant. I wanted to turn now towards the World Championships just gone. We saw some sort of ugly scenes and sort of, abusive chanting, didn't we, during the tournament, especially towards Gerwyn Price. I just wanted to get your sort of opinion on where do you stand on this sort of behaviour, and what sort of protocols and guidance are given to you guys as on stage officials as to how we deal with this, and who should be sorting this, really?
It's so difficult as a referee, because how do you tell 2,000 people to stop doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
When you're one person, it's, to all intents and purposes, it's probably not going to happen. And when you've got to, I mean, at least when you have 2,000 people, and I'm not condoning it in any way, and I'm not trying to apologize for it, I'm just saying that if there's 2,000 people all booing you, then that's just a wall of noise. If you had one person all of a sudden shout miss or whistle or whatever, that can actually be more off-putting than if you had 2,000 people creating just a wall of noise.
Blanket noise.
So, as a referee, I tend to jump in more when there's one person who is really sort of being malicious, like they know what they're doing, they know that they're trying to put this guy off.
Yeah.
So I will step in on those occasions, but it's very difficult to do that when there's 2,000, when you know that your efforts are most likely to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
At least with the one person or the two people or that table over there or something, you can actually do something about that. You can talk to them, you could have them thrown out or ejected if you speak to security. So that's the way I tend to do it as a referee, to be honest. I think it's probably the best thing. I mean, how we solve it, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Is my honest answer.
I've got some sort of, personal experience. I worked in the Millennium Stadium for 15 years, and, you can have so many messages come from, hierarchy and management, but then, if a fight broke out in my area of the stand, a lot of it comes down to that individual steward or a team of stewards, who have to think, okay, this has gone too far, and some people have to take responsibility sometimes. And I think, to be fair to you guys, you and your team, Huw, you're there to officiate really what happens on stage. I think the security and the stewarding teams in these venues should be really more, stamping this sort of behavior out, because, in the worlds, it was, I felt that, there's a line, isn't there, between banter and bullying. And I think the line was completely crossed in Alexandra Palace.
Well, I mean, if there was a fight at Alexandra Palace, the security would definitely be in there. Security would absolutely be throwing people out if there was a physical fight going on. In terms of the booing, I mean, I don't know. I mean, in terms of Gezi, I mean, I think it's gone to the stage now where it's almost like pantomime. It's almost like, oh, it's Gerwyn Price, so therefore we boo him. They don't know why. It's just what they do. So I mean, if you put it like that, does that then sound so bad? I don't know. I mean, it's not really sort of for me to say, and I certainly do want to speak on behalf of Gezi with all this.
No,
I mean,
no.
I take my hat off to him. Really, the way he stands there and throws such good darts,
Yeah.
and to all that pressure, like I take my hat off to him totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things, isn't it? And I mean, you see it. I mean, in football matches, if someone takes a penalty in the away stadium, they're away from home and they got a penalty, there could be 40,000, 50 to 70,000 people all booing him and
Yeah.
trying to put him off and whistling and booing and all this and shouting things or whatever. So I mean, I suppose you could say, you know, I mean that there's you know, I mean, I know that's football and this is darts, but I mean, it's, you know, you do see it going on in other sports. I think Gezi actually is a shining example of how you can block it out, because the vast majority of the time he does block it out. He does hit his doubles and his 180s, and he wins darts matches.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
he's actually a shining example of how you can come through it.
Right. Yeah.
To be honest, under all that pressure. So yeah, but that's what I think about it. That's how I try and deal with it as a referee anyway, is that it's so much easier and so much more possible to
Yeah.
be able to talk and deal with individuals than what it is with 2000.
No, that makes complete sense, Huw, and I appreciate you giving your opinion on that. As we're talking about Gezi, I just wanted to move on to speak a little bit about Welsh darts in general. Obviously, you know, as a referee, you have to remain impartial at all times. But given we're a Welsh darts blog and on podcast, you know, has the game ever been in a better place in Wales? Would you say?
I mean, yeah, it's going through a really, really strong period at the moment, isn't it? Probably as strong as what I can remember in my time sort of following darts and liking darts. I mean, we go back to the 70s, and you know, Wales was seen as a massive hotbed, particularly in the valleys, was seen as a massive hotbed of darts back in the 70s when television darts and when darts full stop came along. To be honest, is sort of a place of sort of, you know, when darts made its way into the national consciousness, the valleys in Wales was seen as a big place. And since then, that we've produced world champions and had many a good player. But in terms of the depth of Welsh talent at the moment that we're seeing, that we're seeing so visibly, I'm not sure it's been as strong as this for a long time. Yeah, no, you're right. It's great to see.
Yeah. And do you get any chance to, you know, mix with the boys when you're, say, on an Euro Tour weekend or at a tournament? Do you get a chance to meet and have a chat with them?
I thought you were going to say you're one of those players then. The talent. But no, oh my God. No, I do speak to a lot of them. No, I get on well with all the Welsh boys, Gezi and Johnny and young Louis Williams.
Yeah.
And all the Welsh players that are around at the moment. Richie Burnett, of course, just got his tour card back as well. So that's another Welshman back on the tour. So no, I do get on with all of them, really.
You know, going back to what you said at the start, you know, the reasons for falling in love with darts. You know, you've just said it there now, Richie Burnett. You know, I've got those memories the same as you, sat on the living room floor watching him win his world title in '95. You know, that is the reason I fell in love with darts, and I've followed his journey, you know, ever since. And to see him back on the tour now, you know, producing still, you know, decent averages, brilliant darts, and I think he'll just add to the tour, which is brilliant in terms of entertainment for us guys anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just something so addictive about darts. I mean, once you get it, you're sucked in. Like, you know, you can't escape it then. Like once you've watched a game of darts and it's such easy viewing as well. It's so easy to be able to sort of sit on the sofa and just watch a game of darts.
It is,
you know, it's not particularly taxing. It's not something that needs a huge amount of concentration. It's just so easy to watch.
Yeah.
I think we're exactly the same, aren't we? Like it's
And it's
And again,
keeping
probably
those,
that. So
sorry, Huw, I was going to say, it's keeping those people, you know, the ones that watch the Worlds around the Christmas time, where obviously people take a fortnight off work or whatever, you know, to tell them, you know, darts is a game that's played 12 months of the year. Come and watch Players Championships. Come and watch the Euro Tour. So much people are missing out on, I feel.
oh well, yeah, I mean, well, and also as well, yeah, I mean, so for the fans, it's a big night out as well, isn't it? As much as anything, you can have a really good night out with a great atmosphere, and you've got great darts thrown in as well. You know, what you're watching is also very easy to watch.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's fantastic the way, well, the state of darts and the state of Welsh darts is both very healthy right now. So it's win-win.
Exactly, yeah. And just my final question, Huw, and I think you did touch on it at the start, but you know, for any sort of young budding referees or anybody getting into the officiating sort of game, you know, what would be that one piece of advice you'd give them as to put them on their journey?
Yeah, I would say get in touch with your local county, because it's a really good learning ground, as I said earlier. There's other things as well now. There's volunteer marking schemes on the PDC. It's very busy for the Pro Tour, but maybe if you went to the Challenge Tour or even the Development Tour, you know, and marked for those guys on there, and just sort of gets your name out there. And yeah, give it a go and don't give up. You know, it's if that's what you want to do, then by all means go for it. And just try and put yourself out there as much as you can, as best you can.
That's a great piece of advice, Huw. Yeah, and I just wanted to finish really by saying, you know, a good referee is never seen but only heard, and I think you're doing a fantastic job, you know, as one of the top referees in the PDC, obviously with your LGBT plus work, but also representing us as Wales, you know, on the main stage. So, you know, long may it continue, and we look forward to seeing where the Huw Ware story takes us in the future. But, you know, wish you all the best, and really grateful for you giving up your time for the podcast and the vlog. Cheers, Huw.
Oh, thank you, Dylan. No, thank you very much. No, I really enjoyed that, and I really appreciate that. So hopefully come back on in a future episode. But no, you're doing great things with this podcast. Honestly, it's really, really good.
Oh, great.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Huw.